Before I begin, I want to offer thanks to Dan and Susan Hotchkiss, to Kelly Lowndes, and today's worship team and tech team, and our leadership and our care teams, and all those who have made it possible for Alan and me and our daughters to weather this particular storm. Today is Monday, and on Thursday, Alan will have had his surgery. By the time you watch today's sermon, you and I will know how it went. I know most of us have been through this, either as a patient or family or friend. It's part of life. Riding the wind and trusting that we will land on our feet. So let us begin as we do every morning, not knowing what the day will bring or what it will require of us. Just hoping that we have done all that we can and learning that we can do better. This morning, I am going to be talking about some difficult topics, so they will be hard for some of you to hear, and I invite you to do what you need to do to take care of yourself this morning. Dr. Johnson's lessons that she never wanted to teach her daughter laid bare the heartache of motherhood. To know that we can only do so much to keep our children safe, loving, and loved, and that sometimes the world will swallow them up, and fear and love will go hand in hand forever. So, I want to talk about Mother's Day. It was created, as I've told you in the past, as an antidote to war. It was conceived out of activism and not apple pie. Still reeling from the war between the states, the U.S. was constantly engaged in wars and campaigns against the First Nations on their own land. And across the Pacific, the U.S. was in battling factions in Japan that wanted to extricate foreigners like us from Japanese shores. Mother's Day was not created to honor the role of women in a man's world. Julia Ward Howe wanted to challenge what she considered to be a man's world, the world of persistent violence and war. In 1870, Howe, who was a Unitarian abolitionist and poet and social activist and creator of the Battle Hymn of the Republic, she wrote a Mother's Day of Peace proclamation. And I want to just read you some of the words. Arise, all women who have hearts, whether your baptism be that of water or of tears. Our sons shall not be taken from us to unlearn all that we have been able to teach them of charity, mercy, and patience. We, women of one country, will be too tender of those of another country to allow our sons to be trained to injure theirs. As men have often forsaken the plow and the anvil at the summons of war, let women now leave all that may be left of home for a great and earnest day of council. Let them meet first as women to bewail and commemorate the dead. Let them solemnly take counsel with each other as to the means whereby the great human family can live in peace. I read these words and I think of a quote from the author L.R. Knost. She writes, "It's not our job to toughen our children up to face a cruel and heartless world. It's our job to raise children who will make the world a little less cruel and heartless." In Howe's estimation, the province of war belonged to men, and the province of women was peace. It was time, she said, for women to step forward and clean up the mess that men had made. Give us this day, this one day, she said, to do that sacred work. Let men stop what they are doing and listen to women. Let women find their voices and say what they really think. In this day and this age, and as a matter of faith, I believe that the province of violence and the capacity for violence belongs in all of us, regardless of sex or gender. In this day and in this age, and as a matter of faith, I believe that the province of peace belongs in all of us, regardless of sex and regardless of gender. Because I believe that we are all capable of care and nurture, all capable of being relational, to develop empathy. In other words, we are all capable of tenderness and mercy and patience, of mothering when it is most desperately needed. In this day and in this age, and as a matter of faith, I believe that one day is not enough for this sacred work. It is possible for all of us to bring the power of peace to bear on violence in thought and in deed. It is possible that we can do this wherever and whenever we find it. It may be in our country, it may be in our communities, in our homes, and it might even be in our own hearts. It's not a skill that comes naturally to us, but it is something that we can learn and forgive ourselves for needing to learn it. We all want to be safe, to be loved, and to be loving. We all want to belong, to be able to think that we are good people, to protect ourselves from harm and from hurting others. How can we do more to make this world a little less cruel and heartless? With that in mind, a few weeks ago, I signed up for a course in bystander intervention training. It was online. It was hosted by somebody that I knew. I was joined by people from all walks of life and from different countries. Some wanted to make their communities safer. Some had lost their children to violence. Some wanted to get themselves past the fear of doing something, anything in the moment to help someone else. They wanted to get past their fear of exposing their vulnerabilities, especially when we all wanted to be heroes, we thought. All of us wanted to live into our values, to express love and justice in public. I'm going to talk about this, but I'm only going to be talking about the highlights because I strongly encourage each and every one of you to find out for yourselves what I learned in this seminar, to find out that you know more than you think you do, and that being helpful does not require heroism, but it does require courage. First, the first thing that I learned was the language of harm. It is very careful and it is very precise. We call someone a harm doer rather than a bully. We call someone a target rather than a victim. We call someone a passive bystander who ignores someone at risk or sees someone at risk and does nothing. And we call someone an active bystander who sees someone at risk and does something, intervenes. But before the organizers would let us begin, they told us it was very important to understand something, to understand that we had all experienced being each one of those roles in our own lives. When asked, each one of us had remembered being hurt emotionally or physically, hurting someone else emotionally or physically, seeing someone hurting or being hurt, seeing someone hurting or being hurt but not being able or willing to do anything about it, seeing someone hurting or being hurt and doing something about it. These things can and do happen anywhere and anytime. Just a few days ago, you may have heard about an incident on the Boston Common. A group of 5 children turned on a couple of bystanders who had told them to stop harassing a woman and her young child. You may have experienced a situation at work where someone is consistently making derogatory remarks about others at that workplace. You may round the corner of a supermarket aisle and see a parent abusing their child. So I'm sure you're thinking, what could I do in that situation? And what does this have to do with Mother's Day? I'll answer both of those questions. In the training, we learned that there are some things that govern our reactions. They're unique to each one of us. But some of the things that they have in common are that our lizard brain wants us to flee, to freeze, or to fight, or just avoid the scene altogether. Or we may really, really want someone else to deal with it. Or we're confused about whether someone actually needs help, or, by gosh, we could be misinterpreting the whole thing. Or we're afraid of disapproval, of looking foolish, of saying the wrong thing. Or we're afraid of being in danger, that we'll be hurt trying to help someone else, or that there will be revenge or retaliation. So the organizers of this program invited us to learn and listen, but also to spend some time figuring out for ourselves what strategies will help us overcome our particular inhibitions. They advise that we take a moment to assess ourselves. Take a moment out of that first encounter with the situation. Assess ourselves. Do we feel safe? Do we feel strong? Do we feel strong? And allow ourselves to only do what we can do and feel safe doing it. Allow ourselves that. In the process, take a moment to analyze the situation, evaluate it. What's going on around us? Are we actually alone? Are we actually alone? Are there others that we can involve in how we want to respond? Can we galvanize connections between strangers? Are you seeing what I'm seeing? Are you seeing what I'm seeing? Does everyone else hear this? Can someone pull out their phone and record this? If you need clarity, if that's part of you, you need clarity before you act, you ask. You can ask. Whatever's going on is not just between two parties. You can ask. Do you need anything? Is there anything I can do to help? You can, in the words of some other programs, distract and de-escalate. How do you do that? You actually start up a conversation. You interrupt what's going on. You start up a conversation with the harm doer or with the target or with bystanders around and that everyone can hear. So I know this sounds like a lot, and that's why I invite you to attend the program yourselves, and I'll let you know more about it during the week. But the first question you have to ask yourself is, how will I overcome my inhibitions? For me, I will deliberately remember what it was like to be a target, to be a harm doer, and to be a bystander. And I will let those memories give me empathy and give me power. And I will think of what's going on, and I ask you to think about your response as a kind of mothering. Because what is the purpose in the moment but to keep yourself safe, to keep the target safe, to keep the harm doer safe, to keep the bystanders safe. This is what it means to be an ally. This is what it means to be an ally of mothering in public. To help what a parent cannot do alone. To help what a parent cannot do when their children go out into the world. And I will also remember to bless the times when I will not be needed. And I want to tell you a story before I end. A woman named Eva was a participant years ago in bystander training because she, like Dr. Johnson, wanted to know more about how she could keep her children safe. So she went through the training, and then a little while later she got in touch with the organizers and she told them a story. So Eva and her daughter went into a coffee shop that was new to them in a neighborhood that they hadn't been to before. And they wanted to celebrate something. So they walk in the door, and people turn to see who they were. And sure enough, there was a table of women who started to complain loudly about having those people coming into their neighborhood. So Eva turned around, and she put a $20 bill down on the counter, and she announced to the embarrassed barista, "I am paying for their coffee." And she walked out. This was a lesson that this mother wanted to teach to her daughter about being safe and loved and loving and strong. So happy Mother's Day. Thank you.